because they, in fact, saved the best for last. And by that, I mean they did not. Hello! Here we are again. Got a little something different today, and it's gonna be like many of the movies we're gonna take a look at today, messy. Today I present to you horror films. Horror films that I own specifically on physical media. In some cases box sets, and in other cases just in a pile. I guess I was just thinking, when else am I ever gonna talk about The Phantom of the Paradise? Yeah, The Phantom of the Paradise. We'll get there. Where to begin? So many choices. Let's start out, which for me is a place of relative strength, the Friday the 13th franchise.
Friday the 13th.
Now this is going to be spread all over hell. Well, I mean, or rather it's going to eventually get spread all over hell, because at some point we're going to run into some weird distribution situations. One thing that might have already jumped out at you is that, hey, this looks like a bunch of DVDs, and for the most part it is. The reason for this is that while I have an affinity for physical media, I do not have endless money to dump into it. The other reason is that I'm generally pretty happy with my Sony Blu-ray player's ability to upconvert DVDs to 4K. I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of varying opinions on it, but for me, works fine. I wear these. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Could be. Anyway, Friday the 13th. Is this the most glamorous box set you can get? No, probably not. But it works. What do we have in here? Let's take a look. We got part 1 and part 2. These really skinny boxes, and you know, trying to get 2 discs into these little skinny boxes, just ugh. They decided not to even bother and just compress the movies. If these discs are DVD 9s, which hold about 9 gigs of data, as opposed to DVD 5s, which hold something like 4.7, and the movies are split in half and they're both about 4 gigs, that's not too bad for 480p. But yeah, these little skinny little cases, they're not my favorite, but I do like that they're clear. I do like that they're double-sided. You know, it's kind of fun. Oh, I guess before I whip through these, I should say the first 2 are my favorite, probably because of my age. This first Friday the 13th came out slightly before I was born, so I grew up with Jason Voorhees, this maniac in the hockey mask trying to axe everybody or whatever. But of course, by the time I was growing up enough to go back and watch this first movie, what a surprise for me. Look who's the killer in the first one. Yeah, it's not a guy in the hockey mask.
And having a then totally unknown Kevin Bacon and Actor Studio alumni Betsy Palmer in the cast doesn't hurt either.
Killer, Mommy. Killer.
This line inspired composer Harry Manfredini, and he worked it into his score, but shortened
Killer, Mommy.
into the now iconic.
And then here in this second one, get that fabulous decapitated head. He's got the sack over his face. It's just fantastic. These first 2 movies are so charming as a veteran camper of Camp Novi Bosco, which is what Camp Crystal Lake is called in real life here in New Jersey. Yeah, these 2 movies have a special place in my heart, although I guess only the first one was filmed there, but what are you gonna do? And you know, like any horror franchise, you know, it just starts to get a little thin. By part 3, Jason gets his iconic mask, and you know, one of these is, I think part 4, I think, is the one that everybody likes. And like, I think, you know, good. It's good. There, you know, like there's lots of good stuff, you know, because this series is good about like knowing the audience, knowing what you came for. You came here to see Jason Voorhees murder people, right? So that's what happens in these movies. Friday the 13th, it always knows what it is, right? It never tries to be something else, you know. There's no like super serious Friday the 13th movie, you know, like we end up with the wackiness of part 5, New Beginning. And you know, the borderline comedy of part 6, Jason Lives. which is just a delight. You know, at some point you just kind of end up with the Frankenstein monster situation with all the lightning in the open grave reviving Jason. It's like, why does that work? It's like, I don't know, who cares?
And who can forget Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
And of course, finally, you get your big bonus disc here. All kinds of stuff. The Friday the 13th Chronicles, secrets galore behind the gore. There's actually tons of books about the special effects, particularly for the first one. You got some other interviews, Tales from the Cutting Room, blah, 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 and a bunch of trailers. So, you know, for me, like, this is a box set that does all I needed to do. Gives me all the movies, you know, got widescreen format, like, good stuff. It's all I really need. But sometimes I need like a few extra seconds of gore. So like we end up over here. Friday the 13th Uncut, which essentially is just like each kill with a few extra seconds of gore. Do you need both? Not unless like this is your favorite horror movie the way it is mine. I can watch this movie every year. I just adore it. Most people probably don't love this movie the way I do, but for me, yeah, sure, I need the deluxe edition. I think I picked this up for $5, like brand new. Now we've got this other Jason set here. And you're just like, hey, like, what's with all the glare? Like, can you get that in focus a little bit more? Like, yeah, I'm doing the best I can. Like, this is a pain. Okay. This 2-camera situation is all new to me. Basically kind of scratching the bottom of the barrel here with Jason Goes to Hell, which, you know, for me is just barely passable.
To be fair, the opening to Jason Goes to Hell is highly logical. The people of this universe have just had enough of Jason and his shenanigans, and they finally just deploy an entire platoon of the army. Commandos are coming out of trees, they're just unloading on him with automatic weapons, and they finally finish him off with an airstrike. I kinda love it. Yes! But unfortunately the movie's all downhill from here.
Oh yeah, Jason Goes to Hell is the body jumping movie. It's okay. Jason X is generally the sort of thing I would tell you to stay away from, but there are some kills in this movie that are just near and dear to my heart. They're some of my favorite slasher moments ever are in this movie. There's one particular, oh man, like that Star Trek The Next Generation styled holodeck in Jason X. But actually, I gotta tell you, Freddy vs. Jason somehow wound up with an individual copy of that as well. This came out of inventory purchase that we made when this store went out of business, and we just bought all of their DVDs and Blu-rays. It was like they had like 1,000 titles, and we like bought them all for like $100. Anyway, back to the box set. Again, we got some of these like little skinny guys, but they're not quite as skinny as, or are they about the same? Let's take a look. No, I would say this Friday the 13th set is a little bit skinnier than, not quite as heavy duty actually as this New Line Jason slasher collection. It just has like these 3 movies. I think these are just like a little bit hardier than the full Friday the 13th set. But yeah, I do like my clear cases. Not enough clear cases out there like that are just through and through clear case. But of course here, didn't do nothing with the back, and I gotta tell you, I don't like that. Don't like that at all. Don't like missed opportunities. Yeah, Freddy vs. Jason. At least to give you 2 discs of fun, so that's something. I'll just pop over here for my New Line Platinum series, which is the exact same thing. It also has the 2 discs. Try to get you a little better shot there. So the thing about this movie is that if you grew up with these characters the way I did, if you're about my age, Freddy vs. Jason is kind of a loving tribute to the 2. You know, like it takes the lore and mythology seriously while not necessarily taking the movie seriously. There's a character in this movie that's just Jason Mewes.
Dude, that goalie was pissed about something.
But I really like this movie. If you've never seen it, it is from a very specific time and place. I think you'll particularly notice some of the CGI is from the year that this movie was made. they weren't exactly breaking the bank. I find Freddy vs. Jason endlessly rewatchable. I love the cast. Robin Englund as Freddy one last time. It's just well, I mean, we're already here. Let's just talk about it. Yeah, this is the good stuff. Let's go.
Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go.
Hey, what's behind Halloween? Was that a Halloween box set? It's not. It's The Godfather. And you might be saying, hey, that doesn't belong here. Well, I got to tell you, third one's pretty scary. Oh God, that caused me physical pain. I'm so sorry I did that to you. So, Nightmare on Elm Street. Box is a little worse for wear, but what are you gonna do? Just spin it around here. So I gotta tell you, growing up in the 80s, I mean, I don't know if there was anything scarier than Freddy. You know, it's just a good story. It's just a good idea.
The kids of Elm Street don't know it yet, but something is coming to get them.
There's something out there, isn't there?
You just see cuts happen.
I think Wes Craven said, like, he just read something about people who had nightmares so bad they died in their sleep. It's just something he read in the newspaper, something to that effect. But man, like, sometimes you just get the right people in the right place, you know, between the cast, the crew, the director, and Robert Englund as Freddy is, you know, it's just poetry, right? Like, it's so good. You know, I'm very partial to the first three. A lot of people will say, like, the first one's great, the third one's my favorite. And that's totally valid. I mean, you know, whatever you want to do is totally valid. But yeah, like, I love this movie. Like, this movie is absolutely fantastic. But really, all the first three are just amazing. This is, like, not exactly my favorite when it comes to DVDs, and you got these weird little things. Like, it's actually kind of fun to pop these things open and closed, but just, like, practically, it's just like why? I don't know. So I like that they're mostly cardboard and it's not just like a big hunk of plastic, but it also just feels very, I don't know, just kind of feels like it's gonna explode in your hands. You know, just seems so easy to rip. But you know, I have a lot of cases like this. Warner Brothers was putting all their DVDs out like this for a while, and I have a bunch of them, you know, and they're all like 20 years old. They're all fine, so I don't know what I'm worried about. This movie's amazing. It speaks for itself. If you've never seen it, like, you got to see it. It's so good. I would say the scariest, creepiest stuff is in the first one. The second one,
There's something inside him.
Fight him! You are not afraid of him. He doesn't even exist.
Freddy Krueger is back on Elm Street.
yeah. Freddy's Revenge, I got to tell you, was largely dismissed out of hand when I was a kid. But, you know, I got to tell you, that's way, way off. Like, this movie is amazing. Like, this is the one people are going to be writing papers about. You know, like, what does it mean? What's happening? And, you know, as a kid, it all just completely flew over my head. But just watching it now as an adult, like, if you haven't seen this movie in a while, you got to rewatch it, because there's subtext and then there's what's happening in this movie. In this movie, the things that happen in this movie, that's not subtext, that's text. How many slasher movies can you think of where the final girl is a guy? From this era? No, not a thing. It was just not a thing. This is one of the few horror movies that really, it's worth thinking about. You got to rewatch this movie if you haven't. If you've never seen it, like, run, don't walk. I love this movie. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is like the Avengers of the Nightmare on Elm Street saga.
In my dreams, I can walk. My legs are strong. In my dreams, I am the wizard master.
In my dreams, I'm beautiful and bad.
This movie's fantastic. There's so much good stuff in it. There's so much to love. Like, the kills, the story, the setting, like, it's all just so great. Get a little Lawrence Fishburne in there. How about that? That's pretty nice, right? Dives a little deeper into the lore, which I think is just like a thing about Freddy that's fun. I just love it. And, you know, they just kind of keep pushing him out. Like, this one has some cool ideas in it. Another silly resurrection scene here that's just kind of a trope of the genre, but this movie, in terms of doing a lot with the concept of Freddy and the nightmares and just kind of grabbing on. So I think like they concentrated very hard, I think, in this one in having nightmares that worked really well with the characters they created. Does the overall story work? Not quite as well as the nightmares. Yeah, I think you could argue that some of the best nightmares are in Nightmare 4, but this movie overall, it's not my favorite. I'm a 1, 2, and 3 guy, and I'll stand by that. The Dream Child. This one, I would say, is probably the most forgettable. It's just not for me. I think like we get another dive into the lore. But for me, this one is the most forgettable of the series. It's not particularly bad. It's just not particularly good. Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. I think it came out in September the same year as Terminator 2. So I think when I saw Terminator 2, which I was also really not old enough to see in the theater, but I saw it anyway because it was the past and that's how the past was. This ad was all over the place. And I gotta tell you, when you went to the theater and like there's like a poster with Freddy's hat and his glove and it just said like Freddy's Dead, I gotta tell you, as like a kid at the time, you were kind of relieved because Freddy just scared the absolute shit out of you.
Kids.
Boy, did they pump these movies out hard. This is the 6th one. I think, you know, they pumped out like 6 movies in like a decade or so. Like pretty hardcore. But what's this? Freddy's back in Wes Craven's new Nightmare. Like going meta before Scream took us to full metaverse. Or is this even more meta than Scream? I don't know. But I really like this movie. I think this movie has some interesting things to say. Gets a little lost toward the end, I'm not gonna lie, but I think this movie is worth watching. And it comes with this other disc, the Nightmare Series Encyclopedia. Gotta tell you, haven't really delved into this very much. You wanna check it out, let me know in the comments. I have no idea what's in here. Here's a little book here. Book's got some cool pictures, actually a pretty cool book. Got some really nice stills. Yeah, good stuff. I really like the silhouette. That's really nice. I like that. It's good stuff. The other thing this came with is the Freddy's Dead 3D glasses. I think we got, yeah, the Freddy's Dead 3D glasses. You need these so you can watch Freddy's Dead in 3D because they, in fact, saved the best for last. And by that, I mean they did not.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too! Now I'm playing with power!
But yeah, you can watch the Freddy's Dead in 3D and pop on these 3D glasses. I gotta tell you, like, Freddy's Dead, like, he literally pushes out like a Wile E. Coyote trap into the road. They're making a 3D movie. I don't, you know, at that point you're making a 3D movie at a point where like nobody was making 3D movies. Like,
Come on, John. Good.
Get out of here now, Tracy! Now!
Hey, you forgot the power glove! I beat my high score. Kids. Great graphics.
yeah, I can't. If you've never seen these movies, see the first 3 for sure. If you absolutely love them, then yeah, maybe you'll want to watch the rest. I don't know. I would say Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Freddy vs. Jason, probably call it a day. Probably those 5 are probably about the max I would suggest going if you're not a hardcore Freddy person. I'm tidying up the movies and thinking, should I talk about the failed reboot? Like, I mean, It's a well-cast movie, but I mean, you just can't beat the king. There's some decent dream sequences. They do a really cool thing in the reboot where they get to a point where they've just been awake for so long, the line between being awake and being asleep is starting to blur, and like the movie will like shake.
At the 70-hour mark, the insomniac will begin to experience micronaps. It means you're dreaming, but you don't know it, even if you're awake.
It's actually really neat. It's a cool idea. There's a lot of cool concepts in that Nightmare on Elm Street reboot, and it's a shame they didn't quite get to where they needed to go. They went a little too far in a few places. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
It's time, Michael.